I just have one thing to say to Tell Your Tale, is to carry on its back the impressive legacy that its CGI counterpart left behind. Good luck, and bring it on! The results work wonders. I mean, I didn't expect we would get to see Allura show up in the very first episode. That really goes to show that the stakes have been raised considerably here. Does someone in the writer's room have a flat pony fetish here? I love this iteration of Sparky entire tale. I mean, he feels like a real kid with dreams of his own, and his desire to have a sibling really struck a chord with me in particular. What can I say except this was the perfect way to celebrate the Valentine's Day season. We might have just learned the origins of all Unity magic and Equestria. Oh my goodness, this is story potential here. I gotta write something. Comet, whenever he shows up, might become the new central characters generation down the line just like Misty did. And his story might be intrinsically linked to Allura. Plus the magic swirling around Misty here is silver colored, kind of Star Soul's own aura. As I said, it's a very optimistic and empowering message to teach kids. And like I said in many other videos, I love it when these episodes contain such great morals at the end, because that's what you want to come out remembering. By choosing to do this, the writers are going the extra mile by putting the effort to have the characters teach us something through their core values. It's one of the reasons why I find Season 2 to be a lot more concise and focused than Season 1, as it really does feel like an actual show at this point. But to have it be revealed this early into the season and have it tie back to Sunny's fear of being an outcast again is very fascinating and helps add an extra layer of dimension to her right off the bat. This episode gave him so much extra personality and layers of development that I kinda want him to get explored further. In fact, if there was one word I could use to describe this episode, it would be just that. Wholesome. I love Terratell's version of Izzy now, and they managed to completely fix her by leaning into the sincerity that makes her unique. I will always stand by and defend Tell Your Tale. And it's time for us as a community to unite behind it once and for all. Once again, the writers know how to utilize Misty exceptionally well post-arc, when she's now the one offering companionship to others, the same way her friends once did for her. The episode just has a lot of heart to it as well. It has elements about talking about deceased parents and adds dimension to Sunny as a character. And at the end, Zip thanks her friends for showing her that she shouldn't rush into dangerous situations alone, that she should always count on her friends for help. That was great character development for her, and I really liked that. All she really needed was a true friend to show her the way. Misty learned this episode that, even though things didn't go exactly the way she had hoped they would, she still had fun and spent quality time with her newfound family. Both the last episode and this one gave me exactly what I like to see from this show. Lessons being taught and characters growing. And if she can continue to uplift people and inspire them to be the best they can be, then perhaps her story is something this generation should never move on from. She also doesn't really do anything until the episode's almost over. Woohoo! Oh no. So show us what she's up to. Even one short scene of Allura doing overgrown flying house cat things would be nice. Her saying thank you to the Crystal Bright House was very sweet. I like the bond she has with it. She even gave it a nickname Crystal B, like that's so wholesome. But it's always great to see it in action, because it demonstrates positive messages of compassion and understanding, of subverting expectations and finding companionship in the most unlikely of people. Sunny and Comet make the perfect team here because when they work together, they can accomplish anything and create something entirely unique. Our characters have their second proper fight with Allura and managed to free Izzy. This was awesome. It was intense, dramatic, and I love to see Zip and Pip working together as a team. Never change, Hasbro, you idiotic blue square of a logo. Never change. I doubt you ever will at this point, but I'm just saying, never change. But it managed to leave a lasting impact and recontextualize the whole story up to this point. And if an episode can do that, then that's how you know you got a top tier winner on your hooves. Her journey towards reformation was realistic because it was the only one in my view that was properly built up in advance. This episode was only the start of that arc. If only we could have seen the rest of it, huh? Hello Repony, my name is Hawk Nightwing, the most unapologetic defender of G5 you'll ever meet, and welcome to the official finale of my Tell Your Tale review series! Yeah, this is the final episode, and therefore this is the final individual Tell Your Tale episode review I will ever make. No, this is not the enemy covering G5, not by a long shot, don't worry, don't panic. I know you guys freaked out last time when I said I was done during April Fool's Day. No, I'm not actually done with G5 content, but this is the final individual episode review I will ever make because, well, this is the end of Tell Your Tale. And they say a final episode determines a show's legacy. A good finale rewards the whole experience, and a bad finale ruins the whole run. But what about an episode that's not intended to be the finale? Whenever we discuss any piece of media, we always talk about these two extremes and never the secret third option. Because sometimes a show doesn't get the luxury of getting to a real finale. Sometimes it gets canceled due to network incompetence, or behind the scenes issues, or all the above. So, what about that type of episode? If a show is cut off before the end and not allowed to reach a proper conclusion, can the last episode still make the whole experience satisfying? Well, it's a bit tricky. It all depends on luck and circumstance. An episode not intended to be a finale, but is forced to be the finale, has to act like a finale in some way. It has to reward you for watching up to this point, and feel like a proper send-off, even if it wasn't intended to be. And so with that in mind, you all probably are wondering, did Tail stick the landing in the end? Was G5 worth it, even after all this time? Yes. 1,000,000 times yes. I am proud to report that despite not being intended as a real finale, Tail Season 2, Episode 23, The Water Park, or Slide for Your Lives, was 100% satisfying. I'm going to keep my thoughts here as brief as possible, not only because there's not much to talk about in this episode, but also because I want to focus my attention more on G5 and Tail Season 2 as a whole. So let's get into it. First off, despite this episode clearly not being intended as the finale, it more than works as one. The basic premise is that Izzy imagines a magical water park for the ponies to cool down in after a hot day. Her powers come to life, and the rest of the episode basically follows the shenanigans of nearly all our favorite characters having fun in this water park and having the time of their lives. Until Izzy just makes it all disappear. Sunny mentions how their experience was fun while it lasted. Yeah, real cheeky, Hasbro. And the episode ends on a quite humorous note with Queen Haven and Alphabettle. I really love how this episode ended up being the sequel to the Blocky Walkies. That was something I never thought I needed, but boy was it welcome. Hearing the song again too, man. Let Your Magic Run Wild clearly is Tail's best song. Listening to it again brought me back to a time when we lived in ignorance. Back when we thought this season and the show was headed towards a bright future. It certainly stinks knowing the truth now, but I can't deny I wasn't singing along regardless. And what do you know, Comet's back again, and about time too. They didn't forget about him after all. And we even got an Alpha Haven bit. There was something with Zoom and Thunder, every pony was here. Honestly, if there was any episode Hasbro could have used as a finale, this episode was definitely it. This episode felt like the perfect celebration of G5's world and characters, with every pony being here for a fun time. And that's true to the spirit of Tired Tail. Season 2B went out the same way it began, with a magical burst of inspiration from the true main character herself. It's like poetry, it rhymes. I know there's no character development, no important story development, none of that. It's just a typical slice of life episode with only a brief connection to the overarching story with Izzy's powers. But you know what? That might actually be a good thing. It would have been far more painful for the show to tease a future we'll likely never see play out. If No Place Like Home was the final episode, it would have made us all feel angry that the show was left on a cliffhanger, and that we would never see all these plot threads resolved. But considering everything that's happened, I actually think a quote-unquote filler episode was the best way this show could have ended. We just want to see our characters having fun one last time. No emotional baggage, no worrying about Allura, none of that. Just every pony being happy one last time before this all ends forever was exactly what we needed to see. It just says everything I love about G5 and Tired Tail in it, so I can't be mad at that. It's not a perfect episode, but it doesn't have to be. It's a good episode that offers a serviceable conclusion. I am satisfied with the show leaving off here, even though we could have had so much more. Once again, the finale isn't the strongest episode, but it's one that gets the job done. And I respect the hey out of the creative team for ending Tired Tail and G5 with dignity. Now it's time to talk about this season as a whole. I was never expecting to love Tired Tail Season 2. I never expected to fall in love with Tired Tail as a series. When it was announced that Tired Tail was taking over from Making Mark as the sole defining show for G5, the only show carrying on the story from this day forward, I didn't know how to feel. I was shocked, angry, confused. I thought, why would you replace Make Your Mark with this? Make Your Mark was such a better series. Why would you replace it with Tired Tail? I mean, sure, Tired Tail pulled its weight before. It had some great episodes in Season 1. But there was no way that it could carry G5's story from this day forward. I mean, it's impossible. It can't do it. G5 is doomed. Well, I was right about the G5 being doomed part, but boy was I wrong about Tired Tail not being able to prove itself. Because it sure did. From the moment I first watched Icy Prince when it came out in January, I knew I was in for something entirely different. Something completely unique from the first season. Suddenly Tired Tail became more focused on plot, narrative, character development, telling engaging stories, continuity, world building. The brilliant writing from Make Your Mark carried over to Tired Tail, and I could not be happier. The more the season progressed and kept delivering banger after banger, I knew that everything was going to be okay. My fears that Tired Tail couldn't tell its own story were unfounded. I went from saying that this show could never hook me the way Make Your Mark did, to defending it with all my heart. G5 was back, and in the perfect place to start over. It definitely was never the most consistent series, not even in this season. I mean, in contrast to Make Your Mark, which I dare say had no bad episodes, just average or mediocre ones from time to time, Tired Tail definitely had its fair share of stinkers. But that didn't stop me from appreciating the good, because when this show tried, it really, really tried. This season delivered some of the best ever episodes I have ever seen in a good long while. The character development was incredible. The stories, despite being only 5 minutes, hooked me from beginning to end every time. No matter what flaws it always had me coming back for more. I was wholly invested in this show, and I cared about reviewing it, analyzing it, praising its writing. Man, how long has it been? 3 years, huh? When you look back, it feels like this generation just started. Like we just watched a movie, and now Tired Tale is coming to an end. And it wasn't supposed to be this way, it wasn't. But I think we can still appreciate what this season managed to accomplish in this short time frame. Because what it did accomplish, it accomplished a whole lot. For just 23 episodes, it felt a lot more concise, tightly written, and more special than what came before. When you ask me about Tired Tale, the second season will always come up. Not to say the first season was bad in any way. I still appreciate it for the banger episodes it did deliver, but Season 2 will always come to mind whenever I'm asked about this show. And I think that's for a good reason. Because for me, Season 2 is Tired Tale, the definitive version of it. The version that was truly allowed to detach itself from Making Mark's shadow and spread its own wings, find its own identity. And to that end, Tired Tale was a very groundbreaking show. I know that's kinda hard to believe, but when you think of short shows like this, what comes to mind? Probably something like Wild Mains, where there's cute, quirky stories, but nothing really beyond that. These shows by design are the product of a regressive outlook on kids' attention spans. It's like, oh, kids can't watch past 5 minutes, so we gotta make our shows short nowadays. Typically, these shows are meant to be all style and no substance in order to promote toy lines, and I think that's what Tired Tale was supposed to be. Hasbro wanted to have their cake and eat it too. They wanted to appeal to older audiences with Making Mark, and also appeal to kids with Tired Tale. This show is just meant to exist, not be anything more. But by giving the keys to Tired Tale's creative team, they were forced to put on their big boy pants and make something that can appeal to all audiences. And I think in the end, Tired Tale did that. Yeah, there were moments of relapse, there were still growing pains, but not as much. And I think in the end, Tired Tale finally became more than it was programmed to be. And I think that's the message of G5 as a whole. Defying expectations and rising above circumstances. For example, we've seen that with the characters of this generation. How they all started from nothing and became heroes in their own right in the end. But I think this lesson also has a meta commentary on G5 as a whole, and it defines what its legacy is. Its audience potential was kneecapped after Chris Cox forced Making Mark onto Netflix and Tired Tale onto YouTube as a way of settling Hasbro's debt situation. G5 had all the bad hands dealt to it, being a sequel to G4, which essentially meant the fandom showing their true selves, being limited in its audience, barely marketed, and basically being left to die. G5 wasn't supposed to live, let alone endure, after the death of its visionary, Brian Goldner. But what matters is that it did, at least the true fans of this franchise. It crawled its way up from the gutter, and after a rough start, delivered banger after banger that inspired me in so many ways. Making Mark was tightly paced, beautifully told, and it was basically everything I wanted to see in a My Little Pony show. It was everything I wanted to see in this franchise. I've made my love for the show known before, and I'm going to continue to with the second defense video, but even when Make Your Mark ended and it seemed like all hope was lost, G5 once again crawled out of that same gutter and was like, I got this. Tired Tale stepped up to the plate with Season 2 and fought to be recognized by its fans. It made a bold statement to the fandom that it was not just a silly web series, it was something special, and all it needed to do was let its magic run wild. And once it did, it really did. And that's something I feel should be commended. G5 wasn't supposed to end this way, and it shouldn't have to, which is why I proudly support and plan to lead the Save MLP G5 movement. I know I said I was going to make a whole separate video on that, but I made it, and I don't really like how it turned out, so I'm basically going to combine my thoughts here. Let's talk about the concerns, more specifically how it relates to Save MLP. Because there's a big fear amongst bigger G5 YouTubers, and many commenters that Save MLP G5 is yet another Save MLP. It's the exact same thing, same toxicity, mainly because the G5 fandom has a reputation for being toxic, particularly when it comes to criticism of G5 episodes. And that is quite laughable to me, mainly because we have been on the receiving end of toxicity from G4 purists and G5 haters. So, while there are bad apples in every fandom, including ours, let's not put a blanket label on the entire fandom and call the entire fandom toxic. The G5 fandom is in reality the least toxic fandom you can find. Not only are we just incredibly small, meaning there's less room for toxic bad apples to come in and ruin things like in the mainstream Brony fandom, but our fandom was literally formed due to two things. One, we love G5, and two, we splintered off of the main toxic G4 purist fandom. Save MLP G5 is a movement born out of love for MLP, not hate for it. What the original Save MLP was, and I've talked to Mixmaster on multiple occasions, I've actually argued with him multiple times on fanfiction enough to know how he thinks. The original Save MLP is a movement born out of spite. Born out of spite for Season 9, born out of pure spite for anyone who likes Season 9, and born out of pure obsession to revise the show in their image, revise Friendship is Magic to fit their vision of what Season 9 should have been. That is not what Save MLP G5 is at all. Thanks to this weirdo, our fandom basically has the mentality of, oh, you're starting a movement, you're just like Save MLP. And I don't think that's right to say. Fandom movements aren't bad by default, it's concept versus execution. It's how you go about executing it that determines your legacy. When it comes to any movement, not just fandom movements, any sort of movement, you can have the most noble cause ever, the most altruistic, best intentioned movement ever. You can have a cause to end world hunger or whatever. But if you're toxic towards everyone you come across, good luck having anyone take you seriously, oh my goodness. Not to mention the idea of revising Season 9 is just unattainable. I used to think it was because, oh, Hasbro would never revisit an LP generation. But considering they want to put the G4 Main 6 and Twilight Sparkle in all their marketing, I don't think that's quite true. More so, I think it's because, why would Hasbro go back and revise something they already completed? Because a fan wants it. Like, that season's done. That show's done. Like, it's done. The story is over. On the contrary, getting a show uncancelled and allowing it to finish its season has some precedent. Allow me to introduce you to a little show called Star Wars The Clone Wars. It got cancelled when Disney bought Lucasfilm, and the fans brought it back. After years and years of campaigning, after Disney moved on to other projects, they brought it back. And when it comes to the movie side of things, look at how fans forced an Alita Battle Angel sequel to get made. Or the most famous example of all, released the Snyder Cut. These fans succeeded because they were fighting to bring justice to someone else's vision. They were fighting to bring justice to a movie or a show that deserved a second chance. And to be fair, this is just my understanding of the whole discourse, but another huge difference that separates Save MLP G5 from the original Save MLP is that our movement is purely fan-driven, and it's always been that way. Even back during simpler times when our movement was just about supporting G5, we supported it through our own content. If someone made a hate video, we responded with a positive video, and that was how things worked. And it's literally no different here. All the fan art that's been made, for example, the petition, all that was to get Hasbro to see how much G5 means to people. Fan content drives the cultural impact of whatever we want to promote. And civil activism gets companies to listen. That is something we understand and the original Save MLP doesn't. So there are huge differences between those two movements. But right now, regardless of whether or not we succeed in the future, this is the end. And man, what an incredible run it was. I'm embarrassed to admit it, but this generation, it really did change my life. It saved me at a time where I didn't know who I wanted to be. I was slowly drifting away from the fandom. After G4 ended, I began to move on from My Little Pony and focus on other things. I didn't think I would ever come back, and G5 being a sequel to G4 certainly didn't inspire any confidence. But I came back, and boy am I so glad I did. I found a generation that's mine. A generation I can relate to and identify with. When I was struggling with G4 stories on fanfiction, both due to a lack of engagement from readers, and the fact that my own motivation to make pony stuff was slowly starting to wear thin, this generation came in and grabbed me by the shoulders, dragging me into a new world of unlimited possibilities, compelling themes, engaging stories, and fantastic character development. The more I wrote for these characters, the more I felt like I understood them on a personal level, as if I knew them. I was able to get inside their heads, picture myself in their hooves, feel emotions that they felt, write dialogue that they would say, and make them go on adventures that challenged them the way the shows would. And I learned so much about writing in that 3-year time that it's kinda unbelievable. I learned to put myself out there, advocate for what I believe in, and have people who supported me the whole way through. The G5 community has been the best thing that's ever happened to me, and so has this generation. I wouldn't know where I'd be without it. If I had never gotten into this generation, if I had never discovered it, I would be in a much different place than I am now. I finally got to realize my dream of becoming the writer and analyst I always wanted to be, inspired by my idols from the G4 community. I got to meet new people, and nothing, no cancellation can ever take that away. Nothing Hasbro could ever do could take away the impact G5 has had on all of our lives. And it was fun while it lasted, wasn't it? It really was. This whole time, G5 has been there for me, and it's because of that I powered forward and fought for it till the bitter end. No matter how many times people tried to hate on me, no matter how many times I got cancelled, no matter how many times people tried to tell me no, I still stuck by it and fought for it to the very end. Even when it got cancelled, I did not stop making videos, because I cared for it that much. I fought through the hate, I fought through the cynicism, and I fought for something I believed in with all my heart, even if Hasbro didn't. And there's something worth celebrating in that, is there? That, to me, is the true legacy of G5. I'm not going to say I was ever perfect, or anything along those lines. To say that would be a lie. Since those initial videos, I had a lot of growing up to do. And this generation helped me through that. And so did all of you. You guys helped me get out of the dark place I was in mentally when I first started. And it's thanks to all of you that my channel's made it this far. You guys are more than just friends to me, you're like family. And that's honestly poetic because that was one of G5's core themes as well, friends being family, so what do you know, that is something special. At the end of the day, we all got the last laugh. Because yeah, the G4 purists and G5 haters tried to tear us down, but look at how tight-knit we become as a result. That's something worth celebrating, that's something worth admiring. I'm not sure what the future of this channel will look like beyond G5 and G4 content. Now that G5 is over, on top of making a lot of videos defending it, I also kind of want to get back into G4 as well. I didn't get the chance to review and analyze it due to being too young back when it was airing, but now that I have this channel and an established audience, I think that's a venture that'll be good for me. But that's all in 2025. 2026, which is presumably when G6 is going to come out, I really don't know. I probably shouldn't think that far in advance, but you can't blame me for not being optimistic for G6 in the slightest after this cancellation. It's definitely going to be hard for me to get invested in G6, whatever it is, after this cancellation, because Hasbro really did screw everyone over. And I don't think that's right. Plus, I don't want to support such practices anyway, so I really don't know. Maybe if my channel is just that successful in 2025, I'll stay for 2026. But I may not cover G6, unless it really is that good. I'm burnt out by Hasbro, I'm burnt out by the toxicity of the MLP community, I'm burnt out by a lot of things actually. But there is one small thing I can do. I mentioned in a prior community post that I wanted to move this channel in a more storytelling focused direction, where my own projects and stories are put at the forefront in the midst of my analysis content. And there's a good reason why I mentioned that specifically. See, I don't want to just talk about G5 and the impact it had on my life. I've already mentioned that many times already. Instead, I want to also immortalize its legacy and ensure that it will never be forgotten. Even if people want to forget it, they can't. One final call to action by the guy who can't stop making them. I want to ensure that G5 gets a proper ending. And if Hasbro's not gonna do it, well, it's because of this incredible generation that I became the writer and analyst I am today. And I want to return that favor. I decided if there was one thing I could do to say thank you, not only to you guys for changing my life, but to the genuinely talented and incredible people who made this generation as special as it was, then I should probably do it. These past 3 years have been training me to take on this responsibility, and I think I'm finally ready to do so. And so as my first official act to catapult Save MLP G5 to the mainstream, I want to introduce you all to a little something my friends and I have been working on behind the scenes since the rumors all started. I want to ask you guys this one simple question. You guys didn't think this episode was really the end of the story, did you?
Fine. I'll do it myself.
I'll see you all this Sunday.